What is good, everybody? Welcome into the Bluebloods official podcast of FCS Football Central on SI. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Eastern Kentucky head coach Walt Wells, joining us on the show today. Coach, how we feeling today?
Yeah, I feel great. Feel great. We got one day of spring ball in and getting ready for another one in the morning.
Coach, well, before we get into spring ball, I want to take a pivot back to last season. I said this on the show going into about mid-October. You guys were sitting at 3-4, and you guys knew you guys had to go on a winning streak to make a run into the postseason, things like that. And then all of a sudden, it seems like this EKU team took a turn for the best. You guys knock off Tarleton. It was a top 10 team at the top, if I'm not mistaken. Central Arkansas top 25. You win a thriller over an Austin P team who I believe was better than their record showed. What was the biggest turning point, in your opinion, looking back at last season's team?
I think the biggest thing is defensively. After we lost to Southern Utah and Abilene Christian, we just sat down and talked about how we could play harder and play more physical, just across the board, and that means straining harder, finishing plays, chasing the ball better, just little things that made a difference. Offensively, we had to really figure out who we were identity-wise. We'd had some injuries at wide receiver, so that was hurting us in our throw game a little bit. Matt Morrissey against Tarleton decided that he was just going to run. He's not a fluid runner, so to speak, but he decided to run some people over. And he really won our team over right there. And I think our team started playing extremely hard throughout that game and throughout the rest of the year. And I think that's really what the difference was. Obviously, sometimes you got to take a look at yourself and self-evaluate. I challenged our players, I challenged our coaches, and I challenged myself. And I was like, we have to figure out a way. I think we have a good football team. I believe we have a good football team. We're not getting the best out of them, and they're not giving us their best. That's on them, but that's also on us. And I think our players felt that, and our coaches felt that, and we just went into the rooms and went to work, and that was a byproduct of it. And I was really happy with, all credit goes to our players and coaches because, they really went to work and did some things.
Where would you put that? Because in my opinion, looking back through your EKU career, you guys have had some really good teams. I think you guys have experienced a lot of turnover, right? Which is, we'll get into that. It's very common around college football. Would you say that? Would you say this was your best coaching job at EKU last season?
Yeah. I think as a collective, yes, it was. I think because we made mass improvement in our defense from the year before. Okay. First season without Parker McKinnell, who was a great player for us and a great player in FCS football. And we lost some key pieces that we had to replace. We lost some offensive linemen that we had to replace, some defensive linemen that we had to replace, and outstanding players. And then, like I said, Parker McKinnell. And so I think, being at that 3-4 mark and then saying, all right, here we go, let's roll. And our players and our coaches being able to establish that and get that done. I think that's a credit. Like I said, I've won Coach of the Year a couple times before, and that's not me. That's the organization. That's the offense and defense and special teams coordinators and everybody that's involved in all that. So I think we did collectively our best job here at EKU, and we should. That was if you count the COVID year, it's year 4. If you don't count the COVID year, it's year 4. If you count it, it's year 5. So yes, I think so.
When you look across the UAC, though, this was a conference that was, when it was launched, it was met with some skepticism nationally, right, about just the longevity. You look up now, we did the conference power rankings, looking at all the different power rankings across the FCS. The UAC came out 3rd going into 2025, above the CAA, above the SoCon. When you look at Tarleton's emergence, what Austin P has been able to build across coaches, what you guys have been able to build, you get West Georgia, who was a strong D2 program coming into the conference. North Alabama is trending upwards. Central Arkansas has been what it has been. Looking across the conference, how strong is this conference, and do you think it can get pushed into that upper echelon where we saw the CAA maybe 5 to 10 years ago?
Oh, I think so. I think the universities in the conference that have a commitment to having good FCS football program and a good FCS football conference. I think you see every team in our conference improve every year. I mean, Utah Tech's going to get better. UNA has gotten better. West Georgia will get better. And then like you said, the ones that have been there have all been in the mix. It's a tough conference, and the travel makes it tough sometimes too, because we're leaving here. When we went on that 2-game skid, we went to Southern Utah, which is we had to stay in 10,000 elevation, which really, it affected me just as much as anybody with my heart and everything. And then we go turn around, come home, and then turn around and go to Abilene Christian. That's a hard 2-game streak. The NFL usually goes and stays. Obviously we can't do that, and I'm not asking to do that. I'm just saying it is a tough league in a wide variety of ways. And then you look at our states that our players, our teams are in, that they're coming from. Alabama, you said Georgia, you said Texas, you said Arkansas, you said, and those are some football states that are powers. Tennessee with Austin Peay. Those are some. You're going to be able to find some good high school football players out of there, and you're going to have good football talent on these teams. And I think you look at, David Walker down at Central Arkansas. Josiah Ezram for us last year, the first guy ever, drafted out of the UAC, and we'll have potentially Mike Smith again this year, and some others. And so, I think as you look at all that, we are. And then 3 made it. We got beat, but the other 2 won the first round. It's got them to the second round, and that puts you into the top 16. And so I think that speaks volumes for what the UAC and what our presidents and ADs have built in this conference.
Speaking of that playoff run, and listen, I understand, obviously I don't want you to talk about the call, but it's outside noise is different, right? Because guys like me, Sam Herder, the national media, we can speak on your behalf, right, and say, man, it was just a bad call for EKU. They should have won that game. There were some questionable calls. We can speak about the refs. As a coach, I really want to not talk about the call, but the mindset, right? Because I know you were upset, and we're all human at the end of the day. As a coach, how do you compartmentalize that and go from being just, okay, I want to go say this, and this in the press conference, on top of balancing being a leader in the locker room and going up to your players and yeah, that was a bad call. We could have done this better, this better, this better. We had chances to win the game. As a head coach, how hard is it after the game?
Well, I think the biggest thing with any leadership position is, with whoever you're leading, you have to be real with them. And, our young men were heartbroken in that game. And, we had, our head of officials reviewed the tape. We had 2 touchdowns called back that should not have been called, from what I've been told by 2 different head of officials. And so how do you go in there? Well, you just got to be real. Hey, man, sometimes in life things happen that aren't fair. And you got to pull your boots up, put your boots on, pull your pants up, go out there and keep fighting. And that's what we did. We were this far from catching that pass at the end of the game and winning the game still. So I can't say we didn't do things to win the game. It was a scramble drill with a young man that had played receiver half the season, been a quarterback before that. And in the future, he'll make those plays. But, you just got to be honest with them and just say, hey, sometimes it doesn't go our way. Is it right? No, but that's how life is sometimes. Sometimes life isn't fair, and it's preparing you for those moments. It's preparing you for other things. Did I like it on the sidelines? No. Everybody sees the clip. Well, the clip was 2 plays later where the guy caught an RPO and the offensive tackle was 2 yards in front of him. I was just trying to get that call, just to slow them down, because I knew they were going down to score, because our guys were crushed out there. And I was trying to keep them from, which they ended up getting 3 points out of. And so it's just a hard competitive thing to do. Their officials are human. We do a thing every year where we bring a set of officials in. They spend 2 days with us. They do a scrimmage. They talk to our team. They do a practice. They get to know them. They get up and talk about who they are, where they're from, their families. So everybody understands, hey, man, they're human beings, okay? They're going to make a mistake. It's just you hate that the mistake sometimes changes the outcome of the game.
Right. I think that's probably one of the more underrated aspects of coaching, right? Because everyone talks about the wins, the losses, the preparation, the play design, but it's moments like that where an average person that's not in coaching how do you go into the locker room and address that, and then also keep your cool in press conferences? Because as a coach, you have to know you're walking off the field for media for the next 3 months. All I'm going to have to talk about is that play, and how do I
All I'm talking about.
yeah, and so
It-
how do I
it-
approach it without getting fined and looking crazy on camera? Now, another thing that's changed, I mean, coach, you got into coaching college football in 1997.
Mhm.
There's been so much change. I mean, the list would go on and on and on. And I think one of the biggest things is back in the late 90s, you would have your roster and look at it each offseason, right? And it's like, okay, we've had this kid since he's a freshman. Now he's a junior. He's ready to step in. He knows the system. He knows those things. Coach, in the FCS, there's teams out there who I've talked to coaches, they've had to replace 50 plus players in an offseason. And
Gosh.
some of the freshmen that you have coming in have to play immediately. You guys had 2 freshmen All-American last year that were able to step up and play, with Marcus, I believe, leading the team in receiving. And then it's really tough for offensive linemen to step up as freshmen and play. Coach, how do you approach getting freshmen ready to play? And how different is it as a coach looking back to where you were in the 90s? It was very rare for a freshman to be able to come in and do what these guys are asked to do now.
Well, I think to compare the 90s to now is hard to do because you were building programs back then that were establishing, like, I mean, here at EKU, Coach Kidd was here for so long. I mean, Roy Kidd was here from, the 60s to 2002 when he retired, and I was on that staff. And I mean, so that's 39 years of people that were tied to one man. And then he played here, was a great player here. So he had a pride in this university, not just the football program, but the university, the town, the region. And that made it special, very, very special. Well, that's hard to do nowadays. It's hard to do because everybody's playing for one color, really, and it's green. And, I hate to say that, but that's what everybody's trying to get to. And I understand that because, money makes the world go round. And, I want to make as much money as I can. I'm sure you do. I'm sure everybody does. But it's hard to do that with 18 to 22-year-olds that are trying to figure out who they are in life, as well as football. So I think, number one, for Marcus and Tyrell, it speaks volumes of the people that they are and who's influenced them in their upbringing to be able to come in here, ignore the noise, focus on what they got to get done. Like you said, I've been an O-line coach forever. Playing O-line is the hardest position to play early because everything is so fast and right at you. And for them to do the things that they did, speaks volumes to our coaches who recruited them and develop and saw that talent and saw that mentality in our recruiting process. And then it just speaks volumes to them coming in here and getting that figured out. And it's just hard to develop. I had a player from Western Kentucky call me, that I hadn't coached in 20 years, probably, let's say. And we talked for 30, 40 minutes. It's hard to develop those relationships now because you don't have 4 or 5 years and you don't have the ups, the downs that you go through. It's, hey, coach, I love you, but, they're going to pay me this, so I got to go. Okay. I get it. I'm not mad at you, and what it's doing for our coaches, there's 2 ways to approach it. Obviously, just worry about it when it happens. Or, and we kind of approach it this way is, each position coach is the head coach of his position. Y'all want to be a head coach one day. I get it. I did too. Be the head coach of your position. And when one walks in, and it's going to be one that you don't expect, when one walks in, you better have one to replace him. And that's what's really hard is you got to recruit every day, all day, not juniors and sophomores, seniors or transfers.
I think it's a weird balance, right? Because I do think we expect, like, there were at one point in college football, there was a different standard necessarily for a senior versus a freshman. You expected mistakes from a freshman. So, and I heard Kirby Smart talk about this in an interview. It's really hard to kind of say the standard is the standard when we're so used to the standard being you used to have all these seniors, right, who were prepared to be in these big games. Coach, you take Marcus. He's 18 now, and you guys are going to the playoffs, and it's like, okay, Marcus, we're holding you to the same standard as we would the senior receiver.
You got to make the same amount of plays because you're a freshman. You know, my time in the SEC taught me that, you know, if used to, you would think, all right, I'm going to play the senior over the freshman, even if all things are equal, because he's got the experience. But my time in the SEC taught me that you better play the freshman because you may not have them but for 2 to 3 years because they're going to go pro. You know, they're out of here. And if they don't play, if they're good, if they look and in practice they're winning and they're winning battles and against good people, and they look and see it, then they were going to transfer then too. You know what I mean? Even though the portal wasn't as big then. So you have to understand and evaluate, like, how good is that young man? And if he's good enough, let's do it. So in Tyrell's case, you know, he didn't start the first, you know, we played Mississippi State, and then we played Western Kentucky. And I forget who we played third, but he started the 4th game of the year. You know, and about the second, you know, after the Mississippi State game, when I saw some things with who we had playing, I was like, you know, by the end of the year, when we're trying to potentially make a run to this playoff thing, he's going to be better than the other guys. So we have to get him going, and we have to live with the mistakes that he's going to make. Same thing with, you know, Marcus. Marcus made some mistakes, not mentally, but physically. Some of them, you're just learning. It's different. You know, those linebackers are a little bigger. Those safeties are a little faster. Coverage is tighter. You know, you're not running wide open. And you got to make those contested catches, and he just kept doing that and getting better and better and better in practice. And, you know, really when we knew he was going to be a kind of a guy, we watched him against Mike Smith, and you know, Mike was like, man, this dude's good, you know. And I was like, what? And he's like, man, coach, he's good. And I was like, all right, so I'm gonna start paying attention to him, because if your best player on defense is telling you that, you know, when you're coming out of one-on-ones, then there might be some truth to it. Let's really watch these one-on-ones. And he's an intelligent. Both of those young men, though, are young men that understand the game and pick it up well.
Coach, with all the shifting sands and every year it seems like there's a new transfer portal window. It seems like the transfer portal window might change, right? They're talking about implementing an early signing day now. Even as a coach who's coached since the late 90s, do you ever feel like you have a full or firm grasp on the landscape of college football?
No, I mean, I've been a head coach since, you know, I became a head coach December of 2019. And by the time we signed our first class in, our first full class in February, COVID hit. And so we go through COVID, then we start the full out transfer portal. Now we're starting this JUCO rule. Now we got, you know, I mean, it's just one thing after another. Now we pay players. First of all, you couldn't pay them unless there's, you know, and all. And now it's just like free for all. And so, you know, I've got a thing from a good friend of mine here in town that gave me. It says controllables and non-controllables. And I look at that every morning when I get in here, and I think about what I can control, which is, you know, our attitude and our effort, our work habits, those type things. And what I can't control is what, you know, no offense to the people that are making the decisions, they don't care what EKU thinks. They don't care what Western Kentucky thinks. They don't care what some of these Power Fours think. They care what the SEC, the Big Ten, and a couple of others. And until they get that sorted out for them, then the rest of it will fall for us. But what has happened in the process, in my opinion, is it's screwed up everything for everybody. And I'm not against players getting paid. I think it's a great idea. But I think we went right into it and didn't have a plan. And I don't think any organization, I mean, all we had to do is look at the NFL. It's one of the greatest businesses out there. Just look at it and figure out how we can do things like them. I mean, imitation's the highest form of flattery, right? I mean, they know what they're doing. They're going to be around for a long, long time. And they're the best sports organization out there. And that there's a reason, because of their leadership and their rules. And we needed to figure some of that stuff out before we started implementing all these rules.
You mentioned it earlier. You got to coach under the legendary head coach Roy Kidd. How impactful was he, looking back now, right, on your development as a coach? And how much did you learn from him that you still implement today, being the head coach at EKU, seeing his name up on the stadium and things like that?
Well, I mean, Coach Kidd, was one of the greatest to ever do it. I mean, I have so much respect for his family. And Miss Kidd still lives here in town. Her son Keith. They had 3 children, but Keith, their youngest, who is a longtime scout with multiple teams in the NFL and player personnel person, lives here. So nothing but respect for them. And Coach gave me an opportunity when really nobody would. And, I had a job at Cumberland University, my first one, NAIA job. And I came here to run the dorm and coach the tight ends. And then the O-line coach left, and I moved into that role. Coach Kidd, I guess the biggest thing he always taught me, and that I'm not going to say he sit there and said, all right, Coach Walt, here's how you do it and this, but you just watch. If they could play, he got them to play. And he got them on the field. He put them where they could help. He could convince, the greatest story is Danny Copeland, who played in the NFL, played in the Super Bowl, came from Thomaston, Georgia. He came up, and I wasn't here then. I just heard this story 150 times. He wasn't going to sign. This is back when you could go out and sign people, at the school. So I think it was Jim Tenera was signing him. And Jim was here. Jim worked for 2 guys. He worked for Bear Bryant and Roy Kidd. Now those days are long gone. But Jim went to sign him. He's like, Coach, he's not going to sign him. He wants to play quarterback. Well, tell him he can play quarterback. So he tells him he can play quarterback. So he brings him up here, and of course they got 15 quarterbacks, or maybe it was tailback. I can't remember, but it was offense. And so they said, hey, we're going to move you to defense. Of course, he started. And then every spring he would move him back to give him an opportunity. Of course, they had Elroy Harris, they had Tim Lester, they had all these dudes, that played in the NFL too at those positions. So he always found a way to convince the player what was best for him. Of course, Danny ended up having a great career in the NFL, winning a Super Bowl as a safety, and has a great life right now. And just watching him understand how all the pieces fit. That's experience in a lot of ways talking. And, by the time I got here, Coach was on the back 9 of his career. And so I got to experience all that knowledge that he was pouring into us. And I didn't even realize it at the time what I was experiencing. And now as I've gotten older and then gotten into this role, it all just kind of comes back to me a little bit. But that was the number one thing, man. Find players, get them on your team, find good people, obviously, and good players, get them on your team and put them out there and let them go be successful.
You have one of the top FCS prospects or on this past year's roster. Mike Smith Jr. went to the Shrine Bowl, killed it, and I believe he has a real good chance to get selected in that day 3 area in the upcoming NFL draft. What makes him so special, and what is his real potential at the next level? And if you had to sell a scout, a GM on drafting Mike Smith Jr., man, give me that pitch right now.
Well, it's like I've told every single one of them. He is explosive when he tackles, and he tackles in space as well as anybody that I've been around. And now I've been on, I'm an offensive guy, but I've been on staff with some really good. I was here when Jeremiah Bell was here. And he's as good a tackler as Jeremiah Bell was. Jeremiah Bell played safety in the league for, 7, 8 years. And so, I think he's built, he's 213. He ran a 4.51, I think it was at Pro Day, verted almost 40, blah, blah, blah. He's got all the athletic skills. He matured. Here's one thing Mike did. He matured every year he was here, just like you're supposed to. And his best football was played his last year. So I think his best football is still in front of him. So I think first of all, he knows defenses. He learns easy. He's not a hard learner. He's going to make the right checks. He's vocal. He likes to lead. He's become a leader. There's so many things that he improved on here. And I'm not saying that because it's our program and we feel like, we did that. Mike did that. Mike wanted to do that. He ran to that. And, a lot of people would tell him, a lot of people last year were telling him, hey, you need to go somewhere else to get drafted. Well, everybody at Pro Day told me they thought he was going to be a day 3 guy, no question, that his floor was probably special teams, starting on special teams and being a 3rd or 4th safety, but his ceiling was to be a starter. And they thought they could say that because they think he might have that potential to be a starter on the NFL team. So in a world where they don't keep many of them, I think that's a great compliment. And that was more than one scout that told me that. So I think Mike's going to be fine. He's physical. He likes the game. And man, he's got a great personality. I mean, he makes me smile every time I see him.
Now, offensive lines are a specialty. How involved are you? I know obviously you got to be the CEO, head coach, but do you still get down there in the
No,
one-on-ones and everything?
I do sometimes. The old saying is, right, the hardest assistant job on the staff is the one that the head coach used to coach.
Yes.
And for Eric Ravalette, my offensive line coach, he was my GA when I went to Western Kentucky. He's a starting center on the national championship team there. He came in this year in June and did a fantastic job. I mean, he couldn't have done a better job. And I made it a point to stay away because of the change that we had. And I felt like, he needed to get to know those guys. And we were fortunate, Peyton Collins, first team All-American, was back, and John Stone had been starting there for a while. And then Vinny Munlin had been starting for 2 or 3 years. So we had some guys that, knew the system, knew who to block. So we didn't have to just do that. But, I mean, for him to come in, develop a relationship with Tyrell, get him ready to go, and then have him play in an All-American status, as far as freshman All-American, I think that speaks volume to the kind of teacher he is. And so I go down there every now and then and well, like yesterday, I walked into his office like, what are we targeting? Why are we targeting this away? What the hell's going on? And he just looks at me. He's like, you ain't changed since 2003, and I'm like, I get it, and then I'll walk out. I say, hey, as long as you keep giving us 1,000-yard rushers and minimum sacks, I'm not going to say a word. When you don't, then I'm going to come down there and try to help you out. So, no, I try to stay away. Believe it or not, I've really enjoyed watching defense and being around the defensive guys. And we've got a quarterback battle going on, so I try to stay over there with them too.
Speaking about that, that's actually where I was going to go next. A big quarterback battle this offseason. Now, obviously, I think you can kind of extend this 2 years, right? When you lose a guy like Parker, it's so you can't replace him, right? That's a player that's irreplaceable. You just have to find some sort of stability at that position. One, are you guys looking to stay in the portal for quarterback? Last year, obviously, bring in Matt from the portal. He does a really good job this year. Go back to the portal, get a guy like Miles to come in and compete for the job from UAlbany. What are you looking for in a starting quarterback this season?
Well, the portal thing, I would love to be predominantly a high school. That's what we do. That's what we recruit. Because here's the deal, in my opinion, when those kids sign on signing day, they are excited to come to Eastern Kentucky. They are. Now, was that their dream growing up? Maybe no. But they're excited to be here on that day. And if we can develop them, and they're going to give us what they can give us. Sometimes with transfers, you don't get that because they're a little skeptical about everything. They're a little wondering about everything. If they're drop downs, well, they didn't go in the portal to drop down. They went in the portal to go away. Everybody in the portal wants to be the one guy that goes to, Alabama and becomes a first round pick. Well, I mean, there's one of those, right? Maybe two. And the rest of them, the verse kid, there's one. Okay. Name another one. There's not many. Okay. So you have to understand, in my opinion, that it's important to be where you're at and play hard because, our goal as coaches is still to win. We have, our contract wants are bound on us winning. And so we have to bring in people that want to be here. So I'd love, that's why I signed 2 high school quarterbacks this year. But we didn't have anybody with any game experience or any relevant game experience. So, I felt like we have to go back to the portal to get another one. And with Matt being a 1-for-1 guy, then that kind of hurt us. Now, with the new ruling, he could have been a 2-for-2 guy maybe, but we didn't know that until yesterday or, a week ago. And he's moved on and we've moved on. And that's no disrespect to him or, it's just how it went. And I still don't know if he would be eligible or not. I would have to figure
you never know.
I don't know. So we went in the portal to get somebody that has some game experience, because in the end, it's my job to make sure that we've got a team that can go out and compete right away. And, we don't tip our toe into our schedule. We go to Louisville. And then Houston Christian comes to us, and then we go to Marshall. So, I mean, there's, we don't shy away from playing big, good football teams. And so I need somebody, to compete with Kobe Lamberth, who was going to be here. And Kobe's never played in a game, but like maybe 4 snaps. So they're going to, and it, everybody's, well, is that a true competition? Yes, it is. I mean, if Kobe can beat him out, then that's what happens. If Miles beats out Kobe, then that's what happens. If the 2 freshmen come in and beat them both out, then that's what happens, because nobody has proven anything here other than it's going to be in practices. And so, but you have to be able to function. You have to be able to operate. You have to be able to do those things. And so we went out, and we had a lot of people that were interested in coming in, and with the success of Parker and then the success of Matt, a lot of guys were interested. We felt like going through a variety of interviews that we do, because I think that positions more than just skill. That Miles was the one we wanted to bring in, and when we brought him in first, we brought him and another young man in, and Miles said yes. So we said, oh, let's go. And hadn't looked back. Now you can sign a piece of paperwork and lock them down, which is the best thing that it ever created. And Miles has been here all spring, and day one they both had a great day. So I'm excited about watching that competition for the second year in a row. Because after the first year, we locked in on Parker, and it's just been Parker the whole time. So now I got to do the same thing in left tackle, because this will be my first game I've ever coached without Peyton Collins as my left tackle.
Gosh, that's actually kind of a crazy fact. And shout out to Peyton, man, one of the best offensive linemen at I think any level.
Stud
another
duck.
guy.
I've coached a lot of good ones, man. You can see Trey Smith's jersey sitting back there. Peyton can play, and that's the one that I hope they give him an opportunity, because, and I think they will, but he's smart. He's mean. He's tough. He's durable. He didn't miss a snap in 5 years of playing. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And like you said, I think even if he doesn't get drafted, he's a guy that you're going to see sign a big UDFA deal. And if he gets in the building, I think he's a guy that's going to be a lock to whether it's practice squad or
it's going to be hard to throw him out.
Exactly. Coach, another big thing you guys do, and I've heard you talk about this before, but for people who don't know, Suits for Seniors is coming up for EKU. I think it's one of the coolest events that doesn't get highlighted enough, because we always talk about the on the field stuff, but it's the off the field stuff, taking care of these guys who go out there week in and week out and play, put on the helmets, put on the jerseys. Explain a little bit about what Suits for Seniors is and how it came to be about.
Well, me and my wife were sitting around, and we were just shooting the breeze there, and I was like, what can we do to do something for these guys that do so much, they're doing so much for us that's not just football related, and I think she brought up the idea, I've seen, and we've been at other places where they get custom fit suits. Wouldn't that be nice? I'm like, yeah, how are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? So here we are, we're in the middle of some of the greatest bourbon in the world, and so we put together a event the night before our spring game called Suits for Seniors. And basically what it is a casual dinner. We have steak, potato, green beans, and some rolls. We do have some adult beverages there, and we have a band, and we have auction items and silent auction items and live auction items. We have a purchase price for a table, purchase price for a couple, purchase price for a single. And all the proceeds go to buying suits, for custom fit suits from here in town. There's a place called Cuff to Collar here in town, and Justin Dixon and his partner, they do a great job for us, and they got us involved in that. And so we fit them for custom fit suits, 2 shirts, socks, a belt, and I don't do shoes because, some people want to wear Jordans, some people want to wear boots, some people want to wear dress shoes, some people, so we do everything but the shoes. But the semester leading up to that, the spring semester, what we do is we have 3 to 4 dates where people from our career development center here at EKU come over and train our juniors and seniors in resume writing, interview skills, how to put together a portfolio, how to put together a video presentation of themselves. And they do that throughout the semester before that date, all right, which is the 25th of April this year. And that morning or at noon on that day, we have a big urban center next door that's got a big area. We do what we call a reverse job fair, excuse me. And we have about 40 companies from all over. I mean, FBI to banks, to financial groups, to, teacher, Lexington public schools come down, everything. They come over. We have car dealers, Jack Burford Chevrolet. We have one of our players who's killing it over there now. They come over and what a reverse job fair is, they sit at their tables, put their portfolios, their resumes, whatever out, and the employees come to them. So they don't clutter up, you know what I mean? And work in groups and be like, well, I'm not going to talk to them. I don't want to do that. And we've produced jobs for a lot of guys. And then those, and then they have their suits, some of them, but they have to be graduating to get a suit. That's the whole deal. And so they get their suit, and the juniors get to do it and see what it's like the first year. And then the second year it's on, because now they're trying to get a job. And, I'd like for every one of our players to go pro. They know that. But, I mean, the reality of it is they're not going to. And so they have to go do something. And, back when I played years ago in the 80s, you just kind of wandered around for a couple of years after college. If you didn't have a set plan of who you want, I was one of them idiots that thought he was going to go play in the NFL. And, when it was over, I was like, where they at? And I had to figure out what I wanted to do. And so it's something I think that has developed into that. And now it's become really, really, it's the party of the scene here in Richmond for the year. But it's also, we have a lot of people that have really been generous with not only their time to put on the event and have a committee for the event and their donations to the event, but also their financial donations that have really, these kids are walking out with, $2,500 suits or packages. And I think that's, our way of saying thank you. And here's a start. And if we can help in any other way, we will. But this is one way to get it started. And I think that's important because it is. LSU maybe, or maybe one of the Alabama, Georgia teams had the most ever drafted at 13 or something like that. Well, yep. What are the other, 10, 15 guys doing? And yep. That's at the best. So, we had a guy drafted and, we've had a bunch of guys make it the last 3 years, right? And either to get drafted, make teams, or free agent, make teams and all that. But it's been 5. What are the other 50 doing? And not all of them know exactly what they want to do. So that's a passion that me and my wife Jennifer have, and she's done a great job with it. But we've got people in town. I got to say their names, but Kim Davis is the head of our committee. She does a fantastic job. Judge Harden, Chuck Harden. He's been on it since it started, and he does a great job. Jack Taylor has done a great job with it, and then people here at the university do a great job with it. So it is. We're looking forward to April. I was just talking to somebody about it today. Like, hey, how many tables we sold? We got to do this, we got to do that, and it's always something. But I think I'd rather be moving than just sitting back and letting things happen.
I love it. I think that's one of the coolest things, and I don't think it's talked about enough. Professional development. My co-host on our live show is the assistant head coach down at Alcorn State, and he has a program at Alcorn where they do set interviews, like you said, and they teach guys how to interview for jobs professionally. Because I think that's something that even like a normal college student, a lot of them don't get access to either. And you just get this degree and you get unleashed in this LinkedIn world, and you might get an interview, and then no one knows what to do once you get past that, right?
Well, it's totally different than it used to be, and so. You can't just keep, when I went to college, hey, man, you figure it out. You got a college degree. You already got a leg up. Figure it out, right? Well, I don't know how much the leg is up now, with how things are. So you have to continue to train these guys. And then we ask so much of their time now that if we don't teach them a little bit, then I think we're screwing up. And so, it's something I've seen. I saw Butch Jones do it at Tennessee in a different fashion, but a similar fashion. And that's where the idea plugged back into me and Jen. And when we were there, and I think it's great for us. And the other special thing about EKU, and I said it earlier, we have 39 years worth of guys that played for one man. And so we have a thing here called the Warren Cleat Club. And anybody that played here, coached here, managed here, or trained here is a member of that club. And so those guys come back and interview. I mean, we got great resources with those men. I mean, some of them are so successful, it's not even funny. And they get the opportunity to come back and try to pluck a EKU football player to go do something. So I think it's very, very special.
No, it definitely is. And two last questions for you, Coach. I know you got to run. You probably got a full schedule today with spring practice this week. The first one is looking at the landscape of FCS. You talk about it. You when you got to EKU, that was people forget EKU was one of the first teams to really have a potential dynasty in the FCS, right? And EKU laid the groundwork for the Georgia Southerns, the Marshalls, the App States, the Youngstown States, and now the North Dakota States. What is it going to take for a team outside the Big Sky, the Valley, specifically EKU, to get to that level where you're not just competing for playoff appearances, conference titles, but now you start competing for national titles?
I think there's a lot of things that go into that. And when you're building a program, our guys here weren't born when those championships were won. And that's no disrespect to those championships because they're here. And I said it when I got the job. And we have great history here, and I'm not scared of it. I want to create our own history here. I want to honor what they've done. I want to, understand what they've done. But there are some different things that are going on in the world today as we talk. What we got to do, in my opinion, is have enough depth and have enough belief that we can go out and do it and recruit the right way, which I think we are. I think we've proven that by being in the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years. And I think those things, now we got to win that playoff game, and we got to get multiple playoff wins as we get in the playoffs. I think those things. And then I think once you get on a run, I was fortunate enough to go down to Western Kentucky right after they won the national championship in 2002, and to see the talent level, but they got on a run and they just had a bunch of men that wouldn't be denied. And I think that's what it's going to take. Is you got to have the talent level to do it. And then you got to have the belief. And it's got to work out that way. I really believe that. And, I get the Dakotas have some advantages and things like that. But they also got some disadvantages. I mean, they're in the Dakotas. It would be nothing against the Dakotas. Don't come at me, people. I'm not saying it bad, but it's cold there. I mean, and there's things there. And so, I think there's some things you have to do to try to win, but you got, I worked for a coach that always said ESPN sometimes makes people bigger than they really are. And he preached that into our team, and we upset an SEC team as a G5 team, an up and coming G5 team. And I'm sitting there thinking there's a lot of truth to that. You can't make it bigger than it has to be. You got to go play the moment. You got to go play each play as a life of its own and play that away. But you got to recruit players that can do that. And that's what we're trying to do here. I think that's what we're continuing to do. And I think they've got to believe and work to do that. And you can't let little things get in the way. You can't let little things beat you. You can't let a reverse call beat you. We got to be better than that. And as much as I like to, I'm not blaming them, but we got to be better than that. We can't let it get to that. We can't let anybody get close to us to harm us. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
If we're going to beat those type teams, because all due respect to them, they, North Dakota State ran this thing, and South Dakota State jumped in there, and Montana State's got a great team. Montana's always had a good team. And the list, I'm sure Sac State's going to be ready to go. And, I just think about all, then you look at our conference, Tarleton, here they are, they're ready. They're coming after us. It's like I tell our team, hey, they're coming after you because they ain't beat us yet. They're coming after you. And so you're going to have to be prepared for that. And as coaches, we have to prepare for that. We just can't assume that what we did yesterday is going to help us tomorrow. And that's a lot of work. And winning a national championship, winning a conference championship is hard.
Yeah,
it is hard. And winning a national championship is unbelievably hard. And in a playoff atmosphere, in a playoff format, it is hard. But that's why you do it. And, I wake up every morning. That's what I think about. We got 3 goals, and we had them last year. We'll have them this year. Undefeated at Roy Kidd Stadium, win the conference, win the national.
And you guys did go undefeated at home last year, correct?
We went undefeated at home. We didn't win the conference, and we gave ourselves an opportunity to win a national championship. So you can do all 3, and you can still do each of them. And if you do those things, if you go undefeated at home, you won 6 games. And guess what? Your home crowds ought to be good.
Yeah.
And you should do that for your home fans. And those are things that we try to instill in our people here, because I think it's, this is that kind of a job. It is a tradition-laden job. And there's still people that come to those games and sit in those stands that went to those, went to Wichita Falls to watch the national championship, went to all these games. And I was a part and heard the stories. And, we want to please them just as much as young people too.
Coach, the last question. Spring practice is big. It's a chance for you to evaluate your roster while staying healthy, things like that. How much does spring ball impact how active EKU is going to be in the second portal window that's coming up? And do you think it has any impact, or do you guys kind of know where you need to address going into the second portal window, which is going to open up in just a few weeks here?
Well, I think that's a great question that I probably can't answer completely, and it won't look like how I answer it, because, with the opt-in thing and everything, now you're looking at how your scholarships are done differently, all those types of things. Are you going to have the availability? We went into the spring knowing we had to get 4 more positions. And I was like, we couldn't find what we wanted, that we thought we wanted. We could have found numbers, but we couldn't find what we thought we wanted. So I said, hold off. It ain't going to make a difference in spring. It always does, but it ain't going to make that big a difference. So let's hold on. So we have 4 positions we got to look for. Now, who jumps in the portal? I don't know. 2 years ago, we had our tailback jump in the portal. So we had to go shift gears and go find a tailback. You know what I mean? So if something like that happens, then we'll have to deal with it as it comes along. Like I said, our philosophy here is you're the head coach of your position. You better have names and ready to go. And we meet on recruiting twice a week, and they meet on it every day. And that's just how it is. You have to be active and make sure that you're evaluating talent, because it could be the difference in getting one and not getting one. So, spring ball to me is to start saying, all right, the guys that are on this team, that's 95% of who's going to win games for us right now. Yep. Maybe even 97. And then those 4 guys that we got to go get, they'll help us, but they're just, there's 4 guys. So, do the math, that's probably about 2 or 3%. They can catch up. And that's what we have to do. We have to get players like that to catch up. I just try to replace portal guys with guys that go in the portal for us that make a difference. And we lost 2 that were difference makers for us. And so we made that up already. So now we got to make up the rest.
Coach, I just want to thank you. I know spring practice just started yesterday for you, man. For you giving me so much of your time. I definitely appreciate it. I'm looking forward. Hopefully, I'll get to see you at UAC Media Day later this summer and, get to chop it up again. But, Coach, thank you so much. Guys, make sure to go follow EKU Football on all social media. They are I'll say this, Coach, you guys are one of the leaders in media, I think, at the FCS. And I've been begging programs, invest in social media content because it helps promote your program. You guys have been doing a heck of a job. So shout out to y'all's content creative team. And guys, make sure to go follow Coach Wells on social media as well, as EKU looks to get back to the FCS playoffs next season. But for myself, Coach Wells, Eastern Kentucky, and the Bluebloods, we are out for right now.